The writing is on the wall that we're not the majority, so we're not really the ones being catered to, and that's just statistics. Hello folks, welcome back to my channel. Today we have a more topical video delving into the relationship between the motorcycle industry and women. And this is going to be very free-flowing, open-ended, scrappy, free-form, did I already say that? Basically, I want to leave the conversation open to expansion in the comments and in the years to come, because there's no solution per se, and there's maybe not even a problem per se, but you guys seem to like when I kind of give my 2 cents on my experience being a female motorcyclist and just the kind of state of the moto industry and where things might be going. The kind of question of the day perhaps is, how can the motorcycle industry cater more to women? And maybe a subtext is, does the motorcycle industry need to cater more to women? And there's a lot of directions I'm gonna take this. So get your thinking cap on, buckle up, and we'll dive right in. Firstly, I kind of want to unpack what is the motorcycle industry, because this is a very kind of amorphous entity, and it's not all controlled by the same people, and it's an international experience. So when it comes to the motorcycle industry, I'm thinking that it comes down to a couple different branches. So there's of course the motorcycle manufacturers, the companies that are producing the bikes and the bike parts and the things that go along with it, designing them, promoting them, creating them, you know the drill. The retailers, and this is maybe people who sell parts, who design, aftermarket parts. They're basically the front-facing experience associated with the miscellaneous accoutrements of motorcycling. So that would be the helmets, the salespeople at gear places, the more commercial experience of riding. And that ties in also to the dealerships that actually sell the motorcycles. Sometimes they're also motorcycle product retailers. The dealerships are most often also leading test rides for motorcycles and providing a lot of people with the primary information or the most trusted source often before they purchase the bike. Dealerships can also be retailer of these gear products, which are produced by the gear companies. So gear companies play another role in the motorcycle industry, I think, and that's where a lot of women's complaints often tend to be. And then it might even branch out further than you're thinking. There's event hosts, the people who host local meetups and rides. Sometimes they're restaurant owners or other businesses in the area. Sometimes they're individuals. There's of course the riding instructors and the people who do the safety things. That's a whole other aspect of the industry. And then there's also more kind of casual participants in the industry that you got to wonder what their contribution is ultimately. So that would be the riding groups like the Litas, or that's a more formal group, or more casual groups that are local, just other local chapters of riding. Is the motorcycle industry the buddies you ride with? That's a question to ask. And then lastly, the content creators. Are content creators part of the motorcycle industry? They do contribute to people's perceptions of motorcycles and the information that gets circulated around motorcycles and kind of the education end of things and the entertainment end. Along with content creators on the internet, there's also like media companies and the kind of digital presence, be it on TV or the internet, that are often people's first encounters with motorcycling as a whole subculture. Sometimes you can't pick it up just by seeing riders around and really getting a pulse of what it's like. So that's our framework for, what is the motorcycle industry? And definitely let me know if I missed out on anything, because this is by no means a comprehensive list, but it's an important thing to consider when you're, making your miscellaneous list of demands for how you'd like to see the motorcycle industry evolve or change. There are so many interrelated aspects, and honestly, what is your role in that? And what's maybe an overemphasized burden on certain aspects of the industry that kind of doesn't really trickle down to women? One thing about riding is that it's ultimately a very unisex experience. Just the act of operating the motorcycle tends to only be different if you have different anatomy, and that's just like a size and weight thing. And that's not necessarily universal across all genders. A lot of people can come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. So ultimately, the experience of riding a motorcycle, I think, is one of the most genderless things you can do, and I think that's a really cool part of it. So some of the needs of larger female riders are the same as some of the needs of larger male riders, and some of the needs of smaller female riders are the needs of smaller male riders. So it really just ends up a lot of times being chalked up to like stature and maybe body proportions, and even those aren't universal. But obviously there's some trends, and that's what allows gear companies to market towards the most common body types, heights of people, inseams, all that stuff that contributes to the size of motorcycles, the options that are available to you with gear, and maybe even the types of bikes that you gravitate towards. All of that to say that a lot of the gripes that women might have with the motorcycle industry are kind of universal ones. So I'm gonna go through those off the top so that we can kind of knock away the stuff that's like, you know, before all the naysayers in the comments say like, oh, well, I have that problem too and I'm not a girl. It's like, I believe you. You know, yes, we understand that some of this isn't uniquely very, very specific to women, but the women do represent a minority of the riding industry, and I've definitely heard a lot of women voice their concerns with what's lacking. So first we'll get into kind of the universal things. I did a little Reddit researching and I found this great subreddit that was talking about what do you find lacking in the motorcycle industry. This was contributed to by all types of people. It wasn't in any specific subcommunity other than just like motorcycles. Some of it had to do with the normalization of biking. And honestly, I think that this could help everybody, but it could also especially help women, especially women who maybe get harassed a little bit. And for those of you who don't think that's real, just go out in the world. Once things are more normalized and it's not surprising to see people in certain contexts, I think harassment will go down. Obviously, there will always be people who are trying to undermine others and be a little bit cruel, but maybe the accidental, they call them microaggressions, or the accidental, just like weird social situations would be lessened by the normalization of biking, especially the normalization of everyone biking. One user said, lack of the industry pushing commuting as a purpose. The industry is all about weekend fun or high speed. No education, lobbying, or promotion for commuters. We should see lobbying efforts for lane filtering, incentives for using bikes to commute, appropriate gear, no one makes a pair of motorcycle dress pants, etc. And those points were so profound to me. I think it is I even get comments on my videos. People are like, do a wheelie, or why don't you go fast? I'm like, I'm just chilling. Like, I am a motorcycle commuter. I'm just a around towner. And it does feel like the industry is either racing, street speed demons, adventure riding, which is really cool, but not everybody does that or is not at the stage where they do that. I think that can be an intimidating thing if you only see these major reasons that people start getting into bikes. And you're like, well, maybe I'll just get a moped because I'm just trying to tool around town and get from one place to another in a relatively efficient way, or something with a small footprint, or doesn't cost a lot of money out the front, but that might be a misnomer, and something that can be more gas efficient. So I think that that's such a great point, that the education about commuting and lane filtering, man, because it's not legal to do that in Wisconsin, and I have done it a couple of times when I felt the need to. It was either incredibly hot, humid, like dangerous weather to be out in, just sitting on the piping hot Ducati and stroking out. And then another time was when just like the worst traffic jam ever. It was just so long. And so I just slowly but surely filtered my way, filtered my way. But man, people were so pissed at me. And granted, it is not legal here, but honestly, lane filtering helps the movement of traffic. And discussing that should just be a part of driver's ed. And hopefully in the future, that'll be more common. I don't know what the driver's ed situation is in Los Angeles and other places where it's legal, but here I don't think they even address it because it's not legal, I guess. But honestly, it's good to think about in any kind of education settings. You don't want to only prepare people for like best case scenarios, like only when things go all according to plan and all according to law. So I think addressing lane filtering, even in places where it's not yet legal, is important. Not that you're encouraging people to necessarily if the law hasn't caught up with it, but that you're aware that people might do that, especially people from out of town, or, you don't only drive in your state ever, you often go other places. So if you're just like shell-shocked in Los Angeles, or I think California, Nevada, I don't remember where else, but lane filtering is legal and in tons of places in Europe. All that is to say that promoting commuting can be a really great potential way to get more women into riding, because I think it kind of just makes it more of an everyday thing. It all kind of depends on your personality, but I do know that a lot of women don't want to call too much attention to themselves, or they don't want to have to like be the only person doing the thing that they're doing. A lot of times women gravitate towards community, and that's where like riding groups can really like help bring more women into it. But just kind of normalizing like, hey, people ride and they ride just to like get around, and it's a really great option, and it's also fun. It's like an extra fun way to get around, and you can meet a bunch of people that way. So normalizing commuting can do great things, I think, for the motorcycle industry and for women in it. That was another sub point on the Reddit. It was a culture that normalizes motorcycling. Motorcycling is seen as other, something people do to rebel, to show off their expensive toy, or to get an adrenaline rush, when it should be seen as nothing special, something anyone can own and operate without having to buy into the imagery, attitude, and tribalism. So the tribalism aspect is one of those double-edged swords that keeps some of the diehards in and some of the more casually interested people or beginners out. And I think it's like ultimately useless. I guess it depends. To me, motorcycling is so broad. There's so many different types of people involved in it. But kind of the pervasive narrative is maybe the rebellious chopper kind of vibe. And the more people get into it, the more they realize how striated this experience is and how there's lots of different subcultures. But because it's had a traditional reputation of being like a rebellious thing to do, I think it puts off certain people that are just like, I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's any wrong with more normies being in it. Like, you can tell me if you think I'm a normie. But I think if it's only just a hipster outlaw kind of thing to do, that's not really going to be helpful in terms of like bike rides, man. Have you seen that Portlandia episode for bicycle rides? I think it'll just ostracize people in a really useless way, and then you'll just miss out on having really great folks involved. Oh my God, I can't believe they're literally doing construction on the apartment right below me. Anywho, so another wing of that whole normalizing motorcycling, I know we've been on this for a little while, but he said we'll see lower barriers to entry for beginners, better awareness of motorcycles in traffic, so safety, like that's great. And I think to some extent Milwaukee has had a decent amount of normalizing of motorcycles. Maybe people don't expect it as much in the off season, but I feel like when it's spring, I mean, just the pervasive narrative is watch for motorcycles, and a lot of like the local insurance companies and the culture here promote paying the heck attention to bikes on the road. So the more normal it is, the more safe we could ultimately be because we're on people's minds. They said a more competitive gear market with better sizes for people of all shapes, more favorable legislation, and eventually more interest in enthusiast experiences like racing, off-roading, affordable EV tech, mechanic work, etc. The whole industry ecosystem will be much healthier. There's always going to be some anxiety for some people when bikes go mainstream. I even had, I like dissected this one YouTube comment on my Instagram account, and I kind of went into the fact that this guy was ultimately like very anxious about like women participating in it and like ruining it for him. If other people enjoying something can ruin it for you, do you really like it? Is my first question. And secondly, the more the merrier. That's just my perspective. That's an abundance mindset. And the more variety of people, the more there's no monolithic motorcycle experience. I know for me, one thing about the pandemic is I just have not been meeting like new people that often. So I don't even know as much what it's like to venture out in the world and like introduce myself to someone for the first time. But oftentimes when people find out I have a motorcycle, they are very surprised. And they have this very singular idea of what a biker chick is, and especially older people. I had a coworker, she's like, oh, you're a biker chick. And she's like, actually, I don't want to say that. Biker chicks are groupies. And I was just like, what are you talking about, lady? Like, I'm just a person who rides a motorcycle. That's why I think I can never really get down with that narrative of I'm a biker per se. And I think that's always going to make me feel kind of outside looking in on this industry. And that's the funny thing too is, oh my God, I'm about to get on a tangent. I hope you're ready for this. Maybe I'll put this on Patreon if it's just too much. So we'll see. But basically, I don't identify as my hobbies. So I think it's kind of dangerous to wrap up too much of your identity in a thing you do that other people can like ruin for you or whatever. That's where it's dangerous to buy into labels. That's where it's dangerous to maybe have like one singular ultimate passion that's everything you've ever wanted to do. I think that's why I cope so well with winter, because I love having a variety of hobbies and interests. And winter is just another time to delve into those or to do just more kind of methodical things with the bike, maintain it, clean it, do those off-season things, and I think that's a beautiful thing about it. Granted, the winter is a little long, a little longer than I'd like, but the casual biker is a good thing, so long as obviously they are understanding the risk they're assuming and that they ride responsibly. But I think there's no harm in more people getting involved and lowering that barrier to entry. And just, I mean, man, how much faster would traffic go if more people rode? Especially if you're just one solitary person commuting, it's an efficient, practical thing to do. Granted, on a shorter timeline, it might not be that economical, but once you have the gear down and a couple of other things all set, it's really not a huge expense if you don't want it to be. I do want to do a video about the true cost of motorcycling and weighing whether or not riding is an economical or affordable thing to do. So let me know if something like that interests you. Let's get into more of my Reddit research. I did a lot of this Reddit research, mostly because I have few opinions overall about this because I'm just minding my business and living my life. But it's very good to analyze this stuff, and it's very good to get a pulse on whatever other people think. So on this Reddit discussion, there was a post saying women's motorcycle gear or just gear in extra small. And then it's funny because then deeper down, someone said we need larger sizes. So there's an ask for a larger range of sizes. And I know it's tough because if you know anything about marketing and branding, and the difficulty in marketing to women is sometimes if you go based on stereotypical things, it's being seen as pandering. But if you only offer the tinier version of male things that's not feminized, then it's seen as tone deaf as well. So there is kind of a lose-lose when it comes to companies maybe that are already established and have their lineup that they're just trying to adapt for women. But I'm open to your evolution and your gear production, so don't be afraid to experiment a little bit. There is a concept in marketing and branding. I was just listening to a podcast this morning that brought it up again, and it's the concept of shrink it and pink it. And I know for me, that doesn't really appeal to me. Just making things tinier and in pinks and purples doesn't sell me on something. I do love a good dusty rose, but ultimately I think there's no kind of one monolithic thing that women want. And hey, I'm making a video. Can I call you back?
Sure.
All right, I just got a phone call from my mom, so now I have to get back on track. Oh yeah, so here's the tough thing about women is that I think they often like their clothing to be more self-expressive, to be more representative of their personal style, and often they want it to look a very certain way. And I think with guys, they're more willing to be a little bit more utilitarian about it and just kind of wear the thing that's right for the job and just accept it as it comes. It's if you wear overalls for this job, whatever standard overalls are the overalls I'll wear. And maybe there's some deviation here and there from that, but I think maybe overall men are slightly less particular with the clothing. And then when it comes to motorcycle gear, these manufacturers have always been designing with men in mind, and now there's so many companies, so many looks, so many options. There's the more cafe racer vibe, there's the more street performance bike vibe, there's more adventure touring, and then of course there's all the different safety gear. So one tough thing is that there's no centralized place that is just women's riding gear. I encounter a lot of women's riding gear because I'm looking for it. I see a lot of small brands that have somewhat narrow size ranges or just have the limitations of not being a huge company. And then the bigger brands don't really make chic stuff. I know for myself personally, I kind of like more simple than not for my riding gear, and I like it to almost seem like I could wear it off the bike as well. I mean, I'd actually prefer that. So I think that's one consideration that's tough to factor in, especially since women don't have one style overall. So ultimately, just variety and more women in it will ultimately satisfy that, because with capitalism, people won't neglect a market that is there. And I think at this point, it is tough for women who want to get into riding and want more gear options, because the writing is on the wall that we're not the majority, so we're not really the ones being catered to, and that's just statistics. The more women and people we get into it in general, the more we'll have demands for different size gear, the more the manufacturers will start making that. So we're kind of on this tipping point, I think, in the industry where maybe bigger brands are seeing the success of these smaller female-run motorcycle gear brands, and they'll replicate that at a lower price point. Obviously, we don't want people to like rip other people off, but the truth of the matter is that the smaller gear companies have to put in a lot of upfront cost in, testing and materials and doing small batches that drive up the price point, and it becomes really costly to buy really good looking gear as a woman. I know that I have a jacket that my mom joked is my 1 month's rent jacket, because at the time I was living in my studio apartment and the jacket cost about the same or a little bit more than the rent at that place. So it's no joke, man, the cost of really solid women's gear. And obviously it lasts you forever, until you wreck, and then it saves your life. The thing about women's gear is that I think it will be coming. It'll be so soon, and we'll look down on Gen Z and be like, you don't know what it was like when I had to wear fugly little oversized parachutes on the bike and you get all these cool Dior for motorcycle branded things. I think that's an ironic thing too. There are a lot of motocross and motorcycle inspired things in the high fashion industry, and there's stuff that comes up in even fast fashion brands, but it's not motorcycle safe, it's just motorcycle inspired. So it's kind of interesting because you could bridge that gap a little bit, and you could actually start seeing who's interested in the motorcycle aesthetic and bring them into actually riding and make it accessible to them. Because it's so funny to like wear all the stuff, like wear a moto jacket, or even I see women wearing like literal like motocross pants as a style point, and not necessarily being into riding. And granted, that's like, fashion always borrows from other genres. I remember seeing like chicks on Instagram in like Muay Thai shorts for like martial arts, and whether they're into it or not, those shorts are a look, so I understand. But it would be cool for ultimately the apparel and the clothing and the gear to be a gateway into women actually starting to ride. So just a little monologue, let me know how you feel. Yeah, and the tough thing about buying gear locally is that they just carry limited sizes because it's a smaller portion of the population. So if you're on any spectrum of an but of an uncommon size, it'll be tough to get the right gear for you. I know for me, I'm smaller. I've literally never bothered buying gear in person at a dealer or at a dealership, but I have tried them on at motorcycle shows where a broader variety of retailers will be, and picked up jackets or a jacket that way. Otherwise, just taking my chances with reading the size charts online and knowing my dimensions and ordering that way. So if you are a woman who's looking for good riding gear options, let's all kind of share our favorites down in the comments. And then I know there is this awesome website called WOW Did It. It's like Women on Wheels Did It. And she aggregated so many different like women owned or women slated gear and companies and all sorts of cool stuff. And I'm even on it as Great Lakes Supply Co. And I thought that was so sweet. So there's a lot of great brands listed on there. If you're looking to get some good gear, it's worth the investment. And if you're gonna wear it all the time, like it's worth the money putting towards it. Because if you get that thing that you don't really like, but it's the only option, you're just never gonna wanna wear it. So that's just how that works for me at least. Oh yeah, and on the gear end of things, this user, I don't know if they're male or female, but they said gear that doesn't have me looking like Sons of Anarchy on one end and like I'm about to break the time weave fabric from Speed on the other. So yeah, just casual gear, stuff that's like, I'm just living my life and I'm super safe. I know there are really cool armored hoodies, and there's been a lot of really cool innovation with the technology of fabrics. And I think the more we get that, we'll start getting like really lightweight, incredible gear. So looking forward to that, and hopefully the price points get driven down a little bit and it won't be so expensive to keep your skin. So I've been talking for so long, but I feel like I didn't make that much headway. So if you want me to revisit this topic with a couple more concrete agendas, let me know. But I wanted this to be more conversational. I wanted to be more open so that you guys can contribute. And then maybe I can aggregate some of your responses and put that into a later video. Like everyone, like my viewers respond. how can the motorcycle industry cater more to women? So now that we've got this conversation going, I want to thank you so much for watching. If you like what I do online, I post bonus things on Patreon. I don't really talk about this that much, but patrons of the channel get early access to videos, they get some behind the scenes stuff and teasers, and then they often get like first dibs on some decision making sometimes. So, and they get life updates that I'm just like, the internet does not need to know, but it would be nice to fill these people in if they're wondering what I've got in the works and what to look forward to and how I'm doing for real. If you haven't subscribed already, you really should, and you should share this channel with a friend or family member or someone random on the internet who you think might like it. Speaking of liking it, please like this video and follow me on my little platforms and check out my company website, which I name dropped earlier. I don't know if I said it explicitly. It's Great Lakes Supply Co. It's inspired by motorcycles and simplicity and motorcycle visibility and Zen. I think you'll like it. Go check it out. So that is greatlakesupplyco.com, and I've got a little Instagram, and I'm selling coffee over there. I'm selling this mug. I'm very proud of it, and I just got new pins. I just made them, and they arrived the other day. Do you want to see them? I'm so hype about them. I'm going to show you my pins. Okay, hold on. Okay, I hope this doesn't creep anybody out, but I'm thinking it'd be kind of nice to do this like ASMR style. So here's the pin in the bag. And here it is out of focus. This video is kind of chaotic. And it's so sweet. So this is an enamel pin. My autofocus is trying to find a face, but you can find this face. So it's an enamel pin with silver and black, so the silver is reflective. And it's my Watch for Cycles third eye. It's inspired by, of course, visibility, Zen, and kind of opening up your third eye. It is not a reference to the Illuminati, contrary to not very popular opinion. So those are on the site, and amongst other things. Oh, shit. All right, that's the last of it. Thanks for being cool. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, ride safe. Bye-bye.